So recently, after almost 24 brutal long hours, PlayStation Network, which houses all the online features for the platform, finally came back online after such a lengthy and scary outage, and thank God, because it got so bad for Sony fans there that they were just a few hours away from claiming yesterday as a tragic remembrance holiday. And to be honest, man, it was a respectable crash out, because one of the main reasons players were so upset over this yesterday is because Sony, they have this system intact to where all of your digital library games, meaning the ones that you download from PlayStation Store and whatnot on your console, they have this online verification that needs to be met for all offline or online games, meaning that you basically had no access to your digital library titles. So outside of all the obvious online features you didn't have access to, you also had these offline games that would play for like 15 minutes and then cut off saying that, Sony couldn't verify the game's files, basically just edging you with a good weekend in the worst way possible. And even though everyone is pointing the finger at Sony for being the worst company to face an outage of this magnitude, even though they do have the longest track record of shit like this happening, like back in 2011 when they had an outage that spanned 23 days, some shit that would have killed modern victims and put them in an anaphylactic shock. You can't just single out Sony for this kind of thing happening, because we see these kind of outages at some point and some scale on pretty much every other platform, like on Xbox having their outages, Nintendo has their issues, PC, there's always something fucked up on that platform for the average PC user. Because it doesn't help that we live in an age of gaming where the internet is basically the centerpiece. Like, think of all the online live service focus that we have on gaming now, all the game updates, how regular it is to release a game in a shitty state just so they can release a patch, a couple days later. And I will be fair, on a broad scale, it does more good than bad for the industry since everything is so convenient now. But situations like this PlayStation Network being down, and pretty much every situation from the past couple of years of other platforms being down from the internet, it's definitely woke up a lot of people to the current model of gaming and how it has its flaws, to the point where you're basically locked out of your access to games in a playable state if the internet is just not around, which, at this point in how the world works isn't a likely scenario. But we keep seeing time and time again that these companies, they are not prepared for that 1% chance that we keep getting the Baldur's Gate dice successfully rolled on, every freaking now and then. And listen, as a wizard who grits his teeth, every month I pay the Wi-Fi bill that somehow increases every year with no real added benefits. Fuck you, Spectrum. I want to channel every single common frustration I've ever heard or felt about how gaming and the internet isn't intertwining in a way that benefits the players in its current model, and then, share my fever dream on how it can change in the future. Because to be honest, man, it all boils down to the reason that we even, are interested in gaming in the first place, and that's just access to our games, man. Yes, that's right. The whole reason that we buy consoles with barely any exclusives, the latest gimmicky internet modems, or lag switches to fuck with somebody you're playing with online, is to complement all the beautiful games that we have access to. Now, like I said, the entire gaming world is completely internet based now for its convenience, whether that's to, have online installs for games that are too big to fit on discs now, the rollout and continual updates, especially in live service games, and probably the most controversial of all the reasons that we have internet in gaming so much now, and that's to verify that you have a legitimate copy of said game, like how PlayStation checked to make sure your digital games were actually yours, even though who else it could have been. You see, this system that Sony was using to check your digital library was Sony's own version of DRM, which is an acronym for Digital Rights Management, which I've talked about in length, in past videos, and it basically means what it sounds like. It's a service that runs in the background that uses the online cloud to verify that the game is actually yours and not a pirated copy, or that you're having any, nefarious things running in the background like a mod or whatnot. And while every platform has its own select games with DRM, whether, they're natively installed or more third party, some just have it more egregious than others in how much you see it as a player, but they all have the same end goal of ruining offline gaming for, any gamer that doesn't have an internet connection right now. You're automatically locked out of so many games, whether they're single player or not, if you can't establish a connection with these DRM services, which is just a huge pain in the ass. Not to mention, sometimes it's not even you. Maybe the DRM service just doesn't want to work today. So, your latest game might use Denuvo, one of the most controversial DRM services out there, but if that game somehow can't establish a connection with the servers, you're locked out of that game like, bad house keys to the wrong door lock. And it doesn't help the fact that, there's reports that Denuvo and other DRM services are known to slow down system performance, especially on PC games. Now, personally, I haven't seen this, and more likely than not, players haven't seen this on performance, but the more likely thing to see is slower loading times when you first boot up the game, since you have to obviously, load the game and then load the Denuvo service that has to connect to the service, which could take however long it takes for whatever the game is feeling like that day. So, there is that. And even if DRM doesn't directly kill access to your games, it can indirectly be an annoying spell to have to push through, like how some Nintendo fans have to deal with when, having their family accounts. You see, Nintendo, they allow players to have a family shared account to which you can register multiple Switches under one household and, share games between all those Switches, so you don't have to buy like Metroid Dread multiple times. You can just play it, buy it once and have it on multiple consoles. And obviously, so players don't take advantage of this, you can only share these games at one console at a time, which in order to do so requires a DRM verification service that players have reported sometimes work and sometimes don't, which can just be annoying to do. But then again, this is Nintendo, who created a revised version of the Nintendo Switch in a red box just so players didn't have access to the same vulnerabilities that allowed them to hack to the first original system. So, I can't say this isn't expected. But egging on to the argument of not having access to your games, the situation just gets 10 times worse when you take into account the prices that these games just charge you. Like, dude, it is a monthly fee to have access to the majority of all these online features, including multiplayer, on every platform except for PC right now, which luckily PlayStation, after this drought, they did reimburse players with like 5 days extra of PlayStation Plus, which is, a good thing because people did lose access. But I just can't not think about the single player games that require an online connection, like Hogwarts Legacy, which was one of my favorite games from the previous years. And because of its DRM and day one patch nature, you need a connection at least at first just to play this title. And that game was a day one success. So imagine all the players that might have bought that game without a decent connection, or just didn't expect that to be in the game and just had to deal with that situation. Like, I know especially there might be some older gamers out there that might want to get back into the hobby nowadays, since they might have had an N64 as a kid, but don't really realize how much modern titles are internet based in this way. So you might have like a really big learning curve for those kinds of gamers. Hell, there's some places that can barely even get a decent connection just to begin with, like in the rural areas of America. Like, the internet connection out there is very scarce, so you're basically cutting off this entire market of gamers that just have a really hard time to get internet. And it just doesn't help that we have big name companies, toying with the idea of locking whole freaking peripherals behind internet connection, like Sony is with their disk drive on their latest, PlayStation 5 revised model. Prior to any PSN outage, if you don't have the disk drive connected to, your console already and verified, you have no access to basically your entire PlayStation at all, because PlayStation, they want to curb any sort of third-party seller of having their own disk drive for the PlayStation, so they can have this marketing profits entirely to themselves. And Sony, they tested the waters with that $80 bona fide DVD player, and it sold out pretty much, a lot of the time. So now we will likely see this trend going forward with PlayStation, and likely maybe the other manufacturers going forward, if they want to make like a cheaper, more cost-cutting console or platform that might require an internet connection to verify the peripheral itself. So that's just another ticking time bomb issue. But if you want to take a step back and look at the entire picture, it's not just the games that you lose access to in the event of an internet crisis, but basically every feature that makes the online gaming hub as convenient as it is. And for this, I want to travel back in time to 2006 to give you a prime example of just an entire service that is just completely ass from the ground up, being the Games for Windows service on Windows. To aid the launch of Windows Vista, the latest operating system at that time, Microsoft, they dove headfirst to the whole PC gaming realm of things and had this whole gaming marketplace service, Xbox Live thing for PC players, to which you would pay money to basically have that same Xbox Live experience on PC, which that alone just made it destined to fail. But moreover, while many players like myself look back at this period with fondness because those game spawns were just so freaking cool on PC games, the whole Games for Windows service was just so freaking ass. Like, you constantly just could not establish a good connection. The marketplace was locked out if you couldn't do that at all. The games required online verification, so you were locked out of even single player games even while you were playing, and that was just so damn annoying. But it just made the whole situation worse when the main appeal of the games for Windows service being, the communication with your friends, your public profile, and everything that, made online gaming easier just did not work. So we can see a similar trend to that when these modern internet services just don't work for, modern systems. All in all, it's just really annoying to deal with. So what do I think would be a solution to an issue of this magnitude? Now, things do happen. I'm not freaking naive to that. I do understand that, to expect perfection from these billion-dollar companies for, having infrastructure of good servers when so many people are playing it, it's pretty reasonable. I'm not gonna lie. Like, they have a lot of money. I would expect for this not to happen that much, but it's just not realistic. Now, we've already opened Pandora's box of the internet in gaming, so we're not going to see a future where the internet is just not going to be as prevalent as it was, back in like the 80s and 90s to, the future. So that's just not going to happen, especially with game installs and how big they're getting. Discs just aren't going to cut it anymore, so you're going to have to install your games online. That's just, a given future. But what I would like to see is more of a focus for the offline gaming scenario just in case, because we've seen that they just don't have backup plans. Like, one thing that I will respect Multiverses for with them shutting down and whatnot is the fact that after they go offline, they're still going to let players that already own the game have an offline version to play, either local co-op or with AI. So that's, pretty cool. Not the best solution, but it's still a solution since you won't have internet on there. And then for situations like PlayStation, I just don't think that there should be a perpetual online check for your digital library of games. Like, that should just be a one-time thing and a one-time thing only. Like, having that be like every time that you boot up a game is just downright stupid, honestly. And I know it's to keep players from doing something nefarious with, pirating and, just making exploits and whatnot, but still, just having this scenario where people are locked out of access to all of their digital games, especially when you have a whole console that's digital only, come on, dude. And honestly, those are like the biggest main points that I hope to see, going forward, because we're likely not going to see PlayStation drop the online connection, requirement for like their disk drive and whatnot. Nintendo and their DRM isn't going anywhere anytime soon, and Xbox pretty much has the same issues of PlayStation, so you can apply to that console as well. And then PC, something is always fucked up with PC. So yeah, man, while I am insanely grateful for the ways that the internet has made gaming convenient, I still just can't not think about the ways that the internet has made it more of a pain in the ass for gaming, and how much I hope that we don't rely on it as much in the future. And that's all I got for today, man. If you enjoyed, leave a like a video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.